And he's Peregrine Hayward.
Firstly, I just want to say thank you so much to Gina for everything she has done, because I know that the work that she's done, the work that people in her organizations have done, has done so much for the lives of myself and my peers who are LGBTQ as well. There is no question that through the incredible work of the generations before us, through their unfaltering bravery and strength, standing against prejudice, threats, and even violence and death, today's young members of the LGBTQ community are afforded a far easier and more open existence. We can find overall acceptance and unconcerned kindness. That does not mean, however, that there is nothing left to improve, that there are no more struggles faced by LGBTQ members of the community today, no more to be done to be better the world for those who come after us. Rather, this is all the more reason to continue striving for progress, seeking an ideal world that may very well be unattainable, but should always be fought for. Middle and high school is an intrinsically transitory and often difficult time for young adults. It is a time when we become painfully aware of the differences that separate us from our peers, that can make it far too easy to feel set apart, to feel as though we cannot fit in or be accepted. These outstanding portions of ourselves can be especially alienating for members of the LGBTQ+ community. It is also in the upper grades of school when adolescent lack of empathy combines with a desire to fit in, a search for status, for acceptance, to form the everyday prejudices, casually presented and potentially unthought of, that are so prevalent in schools across the country. The use of gay and other harsher slurs as insults synonymous with stupid or lame or weak coexist alongside the weightier cruelties, the specifically aimed barbs and willfully cutting remarks, to make being an LGBTQ+ youth often feel like an exercise in disappointment, loneliness, and even misplaced self-hatred. LGBTQ+ clubs are such an incredibly important resource for schools to provide, and, when run correctly, can help not only to foster meaningful discussions on current events and how they affect the LGBTQ+ community, advancements and setbacks, but also be a powerful force for betterment and reassurance in the lives of those who attend. They can provide community, reassurance, and greatly help to alleviate the feeling of isolation many LGBTQ+ youth have. However, it is possible for these clubs to be run in an unhelpful way or even a detrimental fashion. When I first moved to Satellite Beach my junior year of high school, I was thrilled to find out that there was an established LGBTQ+ club at the school. Where I'd moved from in Virginia, ours had only been running for 1 year after the previous administration had left, and we were finally allowed to start one. Going to the club here, however, it was a vastly different experience from the one I'd been to and had been the president of at my old school. I remember I'd gone the day of Club Rush, which is when there are tables set up during lunchtime for all the different clubs, and you can sign up to get information on them and talk to representatives. That day, during club time, the teacher asked how Club Rush had been, how running the table had been. The students running the table said that there had been people leaving fake names and being overall somewhat rude. And then the teacher asked, how does that make you feel? And they were like, unhappy, of course, because it is reasonable to be unhappy when you feel discriminated against. But then the teacher didn't continue to say anything about, well, let's talk about why the actions of these individuals do not have the power to make us feel less good about ourselves, or have the power to make us feel somehow inherently as though we are the problems. Rather, we just talked that day and every day attended the club about times we'd felt persecuted and times we'd felt discriminated against. But we never talked about times we felt accepted. We never talked about times where those we'd told we were gay or told we were transgender or told we were bisexual or anything had accepted us and welcomed us. We did not look at positive representation in the media or positive changes in laws, only negative ones. And it felt as though that club was almost an echo chamber, reflecting back all of the sorrow and all of the frustration that can be felt so easily by students. My point is that often clubs have to be run in such a way that we do look at the problems that are faced, and we do listen to the troubles people have been experiencing, but also that we look at the hope, and also that we look forward towards the future and talk about how to better the future, and how even now there is so much acceptance. But of course it can be made better, but it's not dark only. And then in contrast, the Rainbow Youth of Brevard, which is in Melbourne, was an incredible experience. We discussed positive things in the LGBTQ plus community. We discussed things that were going on that were beneficial, and we did discuss problems we faced. We discussed experiences we had that were difficult, but we talked about why the actions of those people, the statements they'd made that were not kind and were not needful, why those did not have necessarily the power to hurt us. It is so important for all of us, youth and adults, LGBTQ plus and non-LGBTQ plus alike, to remember that, in the words of Eleanor Roosevelt, no one can make you feel inferior without your consent. It is important for all of us to remember that those who are cruel do so out of smallness, as their needless judgment seeks only to lower us to the level which they already exist. And of course, it is not so simple as saying, I will not let this bother me. Because prejudice, judgment, unfounded cruelty, they hurt. It's staggering and unexpected and bitter when they occur. It's hard to respond to and harder to forget. For all that I speak of standing firm and unbothered, I can easily recall a time when I was talking to a classmate whom I greatly respected, and she casually mentioned how much she hated seeing the gay people kissing in the hallways. I would love to say that with affronted dignity and graceful poise, I looked at her and said, I'm gay, you know, but I didn't. Instead, I think I muttered something about not liking to see anyone kiss in the hallways and never spoke to her again. This was such a minor comment, not even directed at me specifically, but 3 years later, and I still remember it, thinking about how I should have responded and feeling unhappy or as though I somehow failed in that regards. It's hard to respond to prejudices and insults, whether it is someone making a comment directed at you or referring to a difficult test as gay. There's an immediate feeling of frustration and, ridiculous as it may be, shame. There is this sense that we should know how to respond, not only to condemn their words of bigotry, be they minor or major, but to positively affect their thinking, as if we should be able to completely revitalize their worldview and convince them to change their ways. It feels as if the burden of not only outrage, but mediation and persuasion falls to us, and it's a burden that we cannot possibly fulfill on our own. But that does not mean that we cannot respond and that it cannot be fulfilled. The fact that there are members of our community out here tonight, all of you listening and learning about what they can do to help, is so incredibly important and powerful. The fact that there are people like Bob and like Gina who are willing to talk and to come to an understanding and a realization of things they have done that might not have been necessarily thoughtful is so important, and it underscores the fact that the world is overall a good place, and overall this country is improving, and overall what we can the lesson we can take from this is to always be kind, to always be there for those who need you, and to always speak out for those in your community if you can, and if they cannot speak out for themselves. Thank you all so much for being here tonight and support.
Thank you so much, Peregrine. This is